Coming up this week, more than half of global buyers want an EV. Arcimoto vehicles are now available in Hawaii. An electric train that never needs charging, and more. Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 107 of the EV Resource Podcast. I'm Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and interviews with industry experts. Before we get started with the news this week, I want to thank our podcast partner, Titan Auto and Tire in Moseley, Virginia, for their support. Titan is one of the very few independent shops in Central Virginia that are qualified to work on EVs, and from hybrids to Hummers, they fix everything. For more information and to schedule an appointment for your vehicle, go to TitanAutoTire.com. That's TitanAutoTire.com. Starting us off this week is an exciting story from Electrek that comes as no surprise to those of us in the EV industry and likely many of you who listen to this podcast regularly. The number of consumers looking to buy electric vehicles has hit 52% globally, according to the latest EY Mobility Consumer Index. This is the first time that number has exceeded 50%, and it represents a rise of 22 percentage points in just 2 years. The MCI survey has tracked consumer mobility patterns and buying intentions since the start of the pandemic in 2020. EY writes, while overall levels of travel remain lower when compared to the pre-pandemic benchmark, the number of consumers who say constant access to personal car is a very important thing to them is rising, and for the first time, more than half of those surveyed, 52%, who intend to buy a car say that they intend to choose either a fully electric, plug-in hybrid, or hybrid vehicle. In a survey of 13,000 people in 18 countries, car buyers in Italy at 73%, China 69%, and South Korea 63% are the most committed to buying an EV. While on the other end of that, consumers in Australia, only 38%, and here in the United States, 29%. They are the least committed. And we'll get back to that U.S. number here in just a little bit. Environmental concerns were cited as the main reason for respondents to buy an EV. That was at 38%. And rising penalties on gas vehicles appeared for the first time as a concern at 34%. The Russian invasion of Ukraine and supply chain disruption is also impacting the latter concern. The survey also shows that 88% of consumers are willing to pay more for an EV, and 35% are willing to pay a premium of 20% or more, in keeping with the MCI 2021 survey's findings. The MCI survey also shows that EV owners are less worried about range anxiety or EV chargers. The top motivator for a second-time EV buyer is that EVs now have longer ranges, and just 27% of EV owners were concerned about charging infrastructure compared to 36% of those currently without an EV. Randy Miller, EY Global Advanced Manufacturing and Mobility Leader, said, "The old issues of worrying about charging infrastructure and the range of EVs will soon come to an end. We know that the vast majority of journeys are relatively short, and as charging infrastructure continues to grow and battery quality continues to increase, we will start to see these concerns fade. It is also clear that those who own EVs know this already." But what about here in the U.S.? Well, from their survey, it appears that Americans' desire for full electric vehicles has basically been unchanged, with only 7% wanting a full electric vehicle compared to 8% last year and 5% in 2020. So what's up with that? For that answer, I'm going to turn to a report recently from Autolist, where they polled 1,355 current shoppers on their website about the top reasons they would not want to purchase an EV. And the results aren't really shocking if you stop to think about it. Taking the top spot is cost, with 47% of their respondents saying that EVs are too expensive. And honestly, I would agree with that. For the majority of people, they are too expensive. 44% here in the U.S., the 1355 that they polled, 44% said they were worried about range, and 36% said there aren't enough chargers. Now, those of us with EVs know somewhat better. I mean, for the most part, there are enough chargers, and most of the time you're going to charge at home, and you really aren't going to have to worry about range. But people are worried about this, and I think that shows a significant lack of education. Corey Lindstone, founder and CEO of Autolist, said, quote, "There are the same top 3 concerns that we saw in 2019 and again in 2021. While sales of EVs are slowly improving as more compelling models hit the market, consumers' impressions of electric vehicles aren't improving," end quote. Autolist also found that many consumers were unwilling to pay a premium for electric vehicles versus a gas equivalent. So unlike the global study that was showing that people were likely to pay more for an electric vehicle, with some paying up to 20% or more, 35% actually were willing to pay a premium of 20% or more. Here in the US, people just aren't willing to do that. When asked how much more they would be willing to spend on a vehicle for it to be electric or for a similar electric version to a gas model that they were considering, 28% of people, they would not spend any extra money at all. This is just astounding how, I want to say backwards, but we'll just leave it at opposite, the US is from the rest of the world. I mean, it's shocking, but not really, and honestly kind of embarrassing and a little sad. One of the biggest arguments for an electric vehicle that I've always talked about is, of course, how inexpensive they are to drive and to fuel. Well, Autolist also found that many consumers just don't care about gas prices, and at the very least, historically high gas prices that we're experiencing right now are not pushing people towards electric vehicles. They asked people what price per gallon of gas what would it have to hit in order for them to seriously consider an EV for their next vehicle. And the most common answer, with 21% of respondents choosing it, was, "It's not about the price of gas. I wouldn't buy an EV for other reasons." And another 15% said they were unsure. Now, the most popular dollar figure, 12% said if gas hit $6 a gallon, then they'd likely go electric. So take this how you will. I'll put a link to the report in the show notes so you can check it out and read it in full. But personally, I have a lot of questions. Like, how do the responses from 1,355 people, which admittedly doesn't seem like a lot, how do those responses stack up against the overall population of millions of car buyers each year? I kind of feel like if the sample size were larger and separated into different regions or even different states, that we might see a little bit more of a comprehensive and realistic view of what's going on here. I bet the data would be very different if you compared a state like California, where EVs are, just taken off, to somewhere like Kansas or even Virginia, here where I live. Either way, the data is interesting and certainly is going to influence the way I think about talking to people about the many benefits of electric vehicles. If gas prices and that cost isn't really important to people, then I don't think I'm going to lean on that as heavily as I might have otherwise. I might just have to talk about all the other benefits of electric vehicles, which you and I know there are plenty. So it's not like we're going to run out of things to talk about if we just remove that. Next, a new GM patent, as spotted by Motor Authority, would add a second two-way charging port to the company's electric vehicles that have the stacked dual battery packs. Which honestly, I think right now the Hummer EV is the only one, and then the Silverado is going to be the other. Maybe the Lyriq from Cadillac? I don't know. I'd have to double check that. But either way, they're talking about adding a second charge port that can either output charge to another vehicle or perhaps maybe to your home or something else while charging the other. I mean, let me take a step back here and explain, because GM's 800 volt architecture that they're using for the Hummer EV, it's really two 400 volt packs. And what they're exploring with this patent is the ability to almost charge or discharge them simultaneously and completely independently. So you could be charging one pack while discharging the other, or, and this is the point that the article I found really makes, charge them both at the same time. So you could plug in 2 level 2 chargers at the same time, doubling the overall speed it takes to charge all of the battery. Or hypothetically, you could charge using 2 level 3 chargers, and you only have to charge half the battery pack, so you'd have half the time that you would charge otherwise. So that's interesting that they're doing it that way. I'm not sure if this will ever make it to production. Honestly, it doesn't seem like it would be something that people would use all that often. So I don't know. What do you think? This is one where I want to hear your response to this. It's certainly an interesting idea, but who knows? It'll remain to be seen whether this actually makes it to production. Next, some good news for Tesla owners that like to let the car steer for them at speed. Tasmanian reports that Tesla has begun rolling out new software update that has seen an increase in the top speed of Autopilot autosteer feature for vehicles with Tesla Vision to 85 miles an hour. This comes days after the company's CEO, Elon Musk, promised a top speed increase on May 15th of this year. This increase in top speed, they say, indicates that the company has been successful in its development. Driving on autopilot at 85 miles an hour is a very good indicator itself, demonstrating that cameras, neural networks, and software are able to process information very quickly and efficiently, guaranteeing safe driving. Tesla originally started offering a maximum speed of 75 miles an hour, later raising it to 80, and ultimately they do intend to provide vehicles with the ability to drive on autopilot with auto steer at a maximum of 90 miles an hour. And this is one update that I really would have appreciated, honestly, on my recent trips last month to Miami and New York. But I have to admit, one of the biggest issues, okay, not the biggest issue, but one of the issues, complaints, if you will, that I have with autopilot is that if you want the auto change lane feature, you have to purchase the full self-driving package. It's not available with just regular autopilot. So basically, you're either stuck in the right lane using autopilot and then turning it on and off again to regularly pass slower vehicles, or the system kind of encourages a different behavior where you would just basically stay in the left lane, park it there at speed, and ignore all the other drivers on the road. And honestly, I don't like either of those options. But hey, with this new speed update to 85 miles an hour, at least now you can ride in the left lane, do an 85, and you probably won't be holding up too many people that are wanting to go faster. Next, Jalopnik is reporting that the EPA is going to pay schools across the U.S. to scrap their aging diesel-powered buses in favor of cleaner alternatives. This week, the EPA has opened submissions for its Clean School Bus program, which will award funding to schools across the U.S. to replace their old diesel buses with either electric, liquid natural gas, or propane models. Schools can now apply for up to $375,000 to replace their inefficient diesel buses. In each case, schools must trade in a fully functioning school bus that will then be scrapped under the program. So districts can't pie off their knackered, non-running old buses in favor of something new and shiny. Any buses scrapped as a part of the program must be from 2010 or older, should weigh 10,001 pounds or more, and serve a public school at least 3 days a week. Schools that then replace these models with electric buses will get $375,000. Those opting for compressed natural gas will get up to $40,000, and those switching to propane-powered models can claim up to $30,000. Any schools opting for an all-electric bus can also apply for up to $20,000 to support charging infrastructure for the electric vehicles. Buses purchased under the program must serve the school districts for at least 5 years. They should also be from 2021 or newer, weigh more than 10,001 pounds, and cannot have been ordered before the school district was selected for funding. And if you're wondering, there are some electric-powered school buses already on the market. There are a few operation actually in many, many states. Bluebird, Proterra, and BYD, I believe, are the big main manufacturers for electric school buses. Of course, Bluebird's kind of I'm kind of partial to them just because I know a few of the people that work there personally, and I've driven a Bluebird electric school bus. Granted, it was only across a parking lot for the Electric Vehicle Fall Festival last year, but hey, I've driven one, so that's cool, right? Anyway, next, if you have been following the EV Resource YouTube channel, then you know it's absolutely no secret that I have a bit of an obsession with the Arcimoto three-wheeled electric vehicles. Ever since I had the opportunity to test and review the Fun Utility vehicle in February, I've been thinking about these vehicles almost daily. So naturally, when a pair of stories pops up recently about these amazing machines, it had caught my attention. The first of the two comes from Electrek about the Arcimoto Deliverator in New York City. And for those of you who don't know, the Deliverator is like the Fun Utility vehicle, but instead of having a rear passenger, that seat is removed and it's replaced with an enclosed cargo compartment. So it's pretty cool. It's the same foundation, but just a modification to the back, and it makes it very practical for delivery fleets. So thanks to a new partnership with an urban e-bike delivery company, Joco, New York City is about to get a fleet of delivery EVs built on Arcimoto's ultra-versatile platform. The pilot program to be run by Joco will see the Arcimoto Deliverator added to Joco's fleet of e-bikes as a delivery vehicle option that can be rented out to private couriers or commercial delivery customers. The pilot is expected to begin in Manhattan on June 15th. There are currently over 50 Joco hubs around New York City, where the company already operates over 2,000 e-bikes that gig riders can rent for use as delivery vehicles. In crowded New York City, electric bicycles have become a very popular choice for delivery riders working as couriers and food delivery workers. Compared to the electric bikes that they currently offer, the Arcimoto Deliverator will offer much longer range, speed, and cargo capacity for bigger deliveries or reach farther locations faster. As Joco co-founder Jonathan Cohen explained, quote, "We see this as a great opportunity to offer the latest electric vehicle technology to the business owners and drivers of New York City. The Deliverator will offer gig drivers more ways to make money by helping them travel longer distances and carry more in eco-friendly and cost-efficient manner." End quote. So if you live in the New York City area and see one of these running around the city, snap a picture and send it to me. I am just absolutely so curious about not only the vehicle. Of course, I'm obsessed. I will fully admit that. But I'm really curious about the business model, because this is something that, you know, with being a delivery driver myself, and I've done Uber Eats or back in the day, passengers, I mean, for years, like 6 years now here in Richmond. And my wife is a food delivery driver. Like, that's why we got the Model 3. So this is a business model that I'm like, maybe there's something to this. So if you see one running around, let me know. I'm super excited about it. And now to travel 5,000 miles away from New York City, residents of Hawaii are the next lucky state to be able to order and own Arcimoto vehicles. The company announced this week that it is now accepting vehicle reservations from customers in Hawaii, the 7th state in Arcimoto's national expansion plan. Additionally, Arcimoto plans to open its first experience center in Waikiki in August, giving customers the ability to test drive and rent Arcimoto vehicles. Arcimoto Chief Experience Officer Lynn Yeager said, quote, "Aloha, Hawaii. We are thrilled to introduce Arcimoto vehicles to Hawaii, a leader in sustainable transportation and one of the most beautiful places we've ever FUV'd. Hawaii is an ideal market for both everyday drivers and tourist rentals, and we can't wait for our customers to enjoy some fun in the sun that only Arcimoto vehicles can provide," end quote. Arcimoto vehicles are currently only available by reservation by residents of Arizona, California, Florida, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, and of course now Hawaii. Customers outside of these states can place a $100 refundable pre-order deposit to be the first to know, and then of course order when Arcimoto opens up in their region. The next story is arguably one of the coolest of the week. As we all know, or should know, there is no such thing as free energy. Or is there? Electrify News this week reports that one electric train never needs to be plugged in to keep running. How? Well, through regenerative braking. Usually, for most vehicles, regenerative braking recoups about 30% of the energy that was used to get the vehicle up to speed. And that's a pretty neat tech when you think about it. A heavy object like a car or a truck moving at high speeds does carry a lot of energy, and using some of that energy to charge up a battery while it's slowing down is a really great way to improve efficiency. I mean, that's one of the biggest benefits of the Prius, and they've been doing that for 20 years. Well, not quite 20 years, almost 20 years. And if you've ever driven any hybrid or EV, you already know how cool regenerative braking is. Now, imagine the same idea in a train, but not just any train, a train that's hauling 20 tons or more. That is a lot of energy, and that's what's being captured by Fortescue, a hard rock mining company operating 54 locomotives in Western Australia to power up one of its electric locomotives. One of them is harnessing enough energy using regenerative braking that they've been able to run it continuously without ever charging it. In this case, by using gravity. Yeah, that's right. By harnessing this elemental force in clever ways, Fortescue was able to develop their Infinity train that runs on 100% electrical power, but never, ever needs to be charged. The train drives up a mountain to the top of a mine where it gets loaded up with rocks or coal, etc., whatever, and then rolls down the hill, riding on the regenerative brakes the whole way down. Of course, you can never get something for nothing. So what is the catch? Well, simply, the train is empty when it goes back up the mountain. So it takes a lot less energy to move its mass up the hill than the energy it is recouping fully loaded when it comes back down. Chief executive of the Swiss electric vehicle firm E-Mining AG, Roger Miauten. Oh my gosh, I'm butchering that, I'm sure. Anyway, Roger, we'll call him, says, quote, when you have a descent of 10% from top to bottom, you never need to recharge. You generate enough energy going downhill as you need to get back up again, end quote. And just to add a little bit to this story before I end, this isn't the only vehicle in the world that does this. If you remember, like I did when I first was reading this, there is another vehicle, in fact, the largest electric vehicle in the world. It's an electric dump truck used at a mine in Europe. I forget exactly where. I think it might be Switzerland, but I don't remember. I'm sorry. But it is also one that uses the same method. It's empty when it goes up the mountain. It fills up and it uses regenerative braking and gravity on the way down to create more energy than it uses when it then runs back up the hill empty. So this is pretty cool, isn't it? Now there's a train that's doing the same thing. I can't think of many applications outside of the mining industry where this would be possible, but it's cool to just talk about it and dream a little bit about the possibility of having an EV that never needs to be plugged in. So that's all the news I have for you this week. I do want to wish you and your loved ones a very safe Memorial Day weekend. If you are traveling on the roads, I definitely encourage you to be as kind and patient to the other people out there as you can. This weekend, for whatever reason, is one of the busiest travel weekends of the year here in the United States. I'm going to be staying at home, working on the magazine, probably a YouTube video on an interview I had with the makers of XCare, the third-party vehicle service contracts and extended warranty. So if you're interested in learning about that, definitely keep an eye out for it soon. If you are enjoying this podcast and you listen week after week, share it with a friend, write a review on Apple Podcasts. That would absolutely be a great help getting this seen by more and more people that are interested in electric vehicles. If you want to listen to any of the previous podcast shows, you can find them on our webpage under the podcast section and on most of the major podcast platforms. I don't think I've missed many. And of course, if you want more EV resource content, I definitely encourage you to run over to the YouTube channel and as well as sign up on the webpage for the monthly magazine. There is not going to be a May magazine after all, because of course I'm recording this now on the 28th and I haven't gotten a whole lot done with it. So I think I'm just going to roll it over to June. But if you're interested in getting the June issue when I am finished with that, then sign up on the webpage and I'll get it emailed to you. If you really enjoy the podcast and want to give back, you can join the family of Patreon supporters by heading over to patreon.com/EVResource. Tiers start at $5 or $10, but you can always choose a custom monthly amount. And thank you as always to Rajeev Narayan for leading the pack at the executive producer level. Part of the benefit of that executive producer tier is that Rajeev gets his name read out every week. Other than that, I recently teamed up with Ohmmu 12-volt lithium batteries. So if you're in the market for a 12-volt battery for your Tesla or other EV anyway, then check out the link in the show notes and you can get a 5% discount on Lithium-Ion 12-volt battery, which is way better than lead acid. It lasts a lot longer, it performs better, it's a better battery. If you do happen to do that, they do throw me a couple dollars if you use the promo code EVR at checkout. So if you're in the market for a 12-volt battery anyway, go ahead and check them out. I invite your feedback via email to hello@ev-resource.com. Seriously, send me anything. I read every email I get. So, if you have something to share, send it on over. Okay, well, I guess that's it for this podcast. So thank you so much for being with me, and I'll catch you next week.